Welcome to our presentation on change management. Change management is a principle located in the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, commonly known as ITIL. It is found in the Service Transition section of ITIL, but it really applies to all parts of it. Anytime there is change in plans along any part of the execution, change management must be used. What does change management actually consist of? To start off, we want to give a definition of change management. It is any and all approaches or methods used to prepare and support individuals, teams, or companies in making organizations. Although change management is sometimes overlooked in an organization, it is extremely important because it gives transparency in the transition process, creates less confusion and problems, and offers the company a more accurate completion timeline.
Now we're going to go through how to properly use change management. Just like the Enterprise Infrastructure Framework, there are multiple models that describe the same process. We created what we thought to be the best model for change management by combining and adjusting various models that we've found. The 5-step process we have decided upon is 1. Create and log a request for change, 2. Review and evaluate change, 3. To approve and authorize change, 4. Coordinate implementation, and 5. Review and close the change request. In order to get the ball rolling with change management, someone must first create a request for change document. This acts as the formal request for a change. This is usually done by the change manager, whose job is to create, coordinate, and implement change. This document contains all the necessary information for the project, including a scope assessment. The required information for this document varies per project. For example, this is a document showing what would go into an RFC for different steps of ITIL. For example, if you are changing something that affects the design step of ITIL, you may want to include things about availability management and information security management in your RFC. Likewise, when changing something affecting the operation step of ITIL, you may want to include something about technical management, incident management, and those other things on the document when writing your RFC.
The next step is to review and evaluate the changes that will occur in the company when a new system is implemented. This is typically done with a change advisory board, which consists of stakeholders like the service owner, technical personnel, and/or financial people. They do this through an impact assessment that considers the impact on the business, infrastructure, customer service, other services, both IT and non-IT services, implementation resources, and currently scheduled changes in the change log. Some of the questions they may ask are things like, how will this affect the company? How much would this new solution cost? What are some of the risks involved in the transition process? And how will it disrupt the business operations and processes? If the risks and costs of implementing and running the new operation are too high, the CAB can reject the change approval and send it back to the person who submitted the request with a detailed explanation of why it was rejected.
The third step is for the change to actually be approved. This step varies a lot based on the particular company you may work for, who approves it, the timeline, etc. For example, in some companies, the CAB may be the ones who approve the change, while in other companies it may be a board of directors. However, while this varies per company, it is an important enough step to include because without this step, the change would not roll out.
The fourth step is coordinate implementation. In this step, you train managers and employees, which is part of resistance management, that make sure everyone is on board and ready for the changes. The key performance indicators are also monitored to check their success during the implementation. There are different ways a company could implement the new system. The first is parallel. This is where the new system and the old system run simultaneously while the new system slowly assumes the roles of the older system. The second is phased. This is where the new system is transferred over in stages. The third is direct changeover, where there is a complete switch from the old system to the new system on a certain date. Lastly, there is pilot implementation, where a small group of people test out the new system while the rest of the population is using the current system.
The final step is to implement, review, and close the change. First, we must implement what was planned in the step before. Then, data and feedback, specifically the KPIs as Brooke mentioned, must be monitored to evaluate the impact of the change. If the implemented change does not have the intended outcome, corrective action can be taken, and another change may need to be implemented. Finally, once the change has been successfully rolled out, the change is closed.
Now we'd like to discuss several of the problems that plague change management. As you can see by this diagram, it shows a simple, almost perfect example of change management at the top. You have employees sending change requests to the change manager and advisory board, who evaluate said changes and then distribute them to the IT employees, who later return a report to the change manager. The problem, however, is something we noticed very often in the Phoenix project. Other employees, which in the Phoenix project were managers and vice presidents from other areas of the company, would send change requests specifically to an IT employee who they knew personally. They would forgo the whole system. They would evade reporting what the changes were, and they disrupt that IT employee's day-to-day work. Later in the book, these changes, although many of them were small, insignificant, and caused no problems, several caused large problems for the company, and they were very difficult for the change manager to locate because they didn't know where they were or what the change was about. The second change we want to talk about involves the workflow. It is the change manager's job to manage the change workflow. If the change manager approves too many projects, the input will exceed the output and the system will become inefficient. As you can see in the diagram, there is much more input into the system than output. The change manager needs to understand the skill level of the IT employees and the amount of time a change will take to be put into place. If the change manager understands this, they'll be able to reach a maximum efficiency, finishing as many changes as possible. The third and final problem we want to discuss was throughout the entire Phoenix Project book. It covers coordinating implementation. This problem doesn't really affect how things are implemented, but who works on the changes. The manager needs to utilize all of their employees, and they need to utilize them as equally as possible. As you can see from the diagram, there are many employees who are not being used. There's one employee who's given all of the change requests. In the Phoenix project, this was the employee who knew the most. He knew how all of their systems worked already, and he would probably be the one who could finish all these changes at the most rapid pace. However, this caused a problem that was unforeseen. It created an inequality of knowledge throughout the IT department. That single employee knew how to fix all of the problems, and he knew where they were probably located. However, none of the other employees had these skills. They had not been given the chance to learn the skills necessary because they had not been assigned any changes.
Let's illustrate a simple example of successful change management. Meet Bob. He works for a large company and oversees the storage systems of its IT infrastructure. Bob hears from his database vendor that a critical vulnerability has been discovered. To fix this issue, the vendors have released a patch in the form of a software update. Due to its severe nature, it is recommended that Bob updates the database to the new version as soon as possible. Since Bob is a big fan of ITIL, he knows a lot about change management. He decides to create a request for change for others to review. He knows that any changes to the database system could adversely affect other enterprise applications, so he is going to make sure that this change goes through the correct process. In Bob's company, all requests for change are given to the Change Advisory Board. The board is comprised of the Vice President of IT, IT managers, and other members of management who may be affected by changes to IT infrastructure. The Change Advisory Board reviews Bob's request for change and considers the impact of the change on existing systems. In this case, the board evaluates the potential risk of utilizing a vulnerable database system and decides to approve and authorize Bob's change request. With the board's approval, Bob begins implementation of the system. To minimize risk, Bob's team chooses to run 2 databases in parallel. After the updated system has proved itself, the vulnerable database is taken out of production and the implementation details are reported to the Change Advisory Board. The board can then record the results and close the change request. By following the basic guidelines of change management laid out in ITIL, Bob was able to safely execute a change to his company's IT infrastructure. As Michael Jackson once said, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make the change. Management. Thanks for watching.